Hi, I'm Diana. Today we're going to make face masks with 1/4 inch elastic. You're going to start with 2 pieces of fabric and put the right side of the one fabric and the right side of the other fabric together. So you've got the wrong sides out, and you're going to sew down using a 1/4 inch seam, or the width of your presser foot. Back stitch at the beginning and at the end of your seam. Okay, and then come and do the other side. Again, back stitching at the front and the end of your seam, the starting and the end. Clip your threads. Turn it so that the right sides of the fabric are out, and finger press. That just means you're putting your finger, your underneath finger and your thumbnail, and you're just going to kind of push that seam to one side. That makes it easier to press it. Do the same with this side, pressing with your thumbnail. Then we're going to iron that seam. Now this is where it's different from the 1/2 inch elastic or the 3/8 inch elastic masks. Now we're going to not do the top stitching, but we're going to press our casing, and this time we're only doing a 1/2 inch casing, so right here at that mark. So a 1/2 inch on both of those sides. Again, a 1/2 inch on this side. And you're going to switch your machine to a zigzag with 2.5 width and a 2 length zigzag. You're going to back stitch at the beginning and the end of your seams. You're sewing right on the edge of the raw edge of the fabric. So you're finishing off your fabric and sewing your casing at the same time. Notice how I put my inside of the toe right next to the edge of the fabric. Clip your threads. Next, you will need your 2 pieces of elastic, and you want to use a smaller safety pin this time. This is smaller than what you used last time. The bigger pins will not fit through this casing because the casing is smaller. So make sure that you use that smaller safety pin. And just like you did before, you're putting that safety pin into that casing and just walking it through with your fingers. Till you get to the end. Put the safety pin in the other casing with the other piece of the elastic. Sometimes you have to work that to get it in there, but it will go in. I'm just pushing it through just the same way that you did before. Now this part is where it's different. Well, this is the same, sorry. So now you're going to measure your elastic 1/2 inch on one piece. And with your marking tool, you're going to mark where it's 1/2 inch. So I'm just putting a mark there. And I'm putting a mark over here at 1/2 inch. And just like you did before, you will overlap that so that the edge of the one piece of elastic is touching that 1/2 inch mark. You're going to put a pin there. And a pin on the other side as well. You have your machine already set to zigzag. If you pull your elastic kind of tight and gather it around the fabric, you have more fabric to work with when you get under here. So you're going to put your fabric or your elastic under your presser foot, and then you're going to take your pin out. Stitch that with your zigzag stitch, back stitching at the front and the back. Now sometimes you might need to help this a little bit to go through because sometimes it doesn't catch on the feed dogs. Pull the elastic so you have something to work with. Put it under there before you take out the pin, but take out the pin before you start to sew. Back stitch, back stitch. Now this part is a little different than we did before. So we have these seams that we want to just barely put inside the casing. So I'm just gonna pull the elastic and just work that so that that elastic is just barely in the seam. You're gonna feel that elastic, it'll be thick right there, and that's where you want it, just right there. So put a pin there so that you know where your elastic seam is and it's not moving on you, and then do the same on this other side. You want the elastic on the same part on both sides. So I've got my seam here and I want my seam here as well. So now I pulled that a little too tight, too much, so my seam was over too much. So I'm just feeling with my finger. See, right now it's right here and I want it a little bit closer to the edge. Now it's right here. And then pin that. Now you're going to top stitch or edge stitch right along this edge. So you're encasing the elastic and doing your edge stitch at the same time. When you start, you're going to go the width of the elastic. Oh, make sure you change your stitch to a straight stitch, not a zigzag. So you're doing a zigzag or a straight stitch, and I'm going to sew across the elastic, and then I'm going to back stitch across it again, and then sew forward again. Oh, and I didn't put the elastic on the back, so I'm going to have to work with this a little bit, but it works. This is not the easiest way to do the elastic. I'll show you on the other side the better way to do it. Okay, when you come to this other piece of elastic, you're going to pull your pin out and just edge stitch that, go all the way to the end, and then back stitch all the way across the elastic, and then come back to the end again. And you see that my elastics are caught up in my threads. So I'll show you the better way on this other side how to do that. So now you have the elastic secure on this side and it's not going to pull out. So now what you want to do is pull this, and you want to measure this gathered part of your mask 3 inches. So I've got 1, 2, 3 inches here. So see how that's gathered up 3 inches. Put a pin there. And then do the same thing with this side. Pull that tight so it gathers it up. And you're going to measure 3 inches. See, this is more than 3 inches, so I need to pull my elastic a little bit tighter so that it's just 3 inches there. And then put a pin. This time I'll show you the right way to sew that elastic so that you're not fighting it. Put your elastic on in the back of your foot. And then you're not fighting that elastic as you're sewing down that seam. Again, you're going to sew the width of the elastic, back stitch, and then sew the whole seam down. As you come to this end, you're going to take out the pin before you get to it so you don't break a needle. Back stitch across and across again. Clip your threads. And your mask is finished. Ready to be safe.